One, a adaptation of the novel of the same name from Ernest Cline. It's directed by Steven Spielberg, one of my favourite directors of all time. Well, mainly because he brought us Jurassic Park, the first film I ever seen in cinema and fell in love with. But no, I adore Steven Spielberg, and it was great to see him delve back into science fiction. So Ready Player One is based in 2045. The world is on the brink of collapse and chaos. So what people do to escape this hell, which is reality, the real world, is they go into the Oasis, which is like a expansive virtual reality universe that's created by a James Halliday, who was played by Mark Rylance, who seems to be in a lot of Spielberg films as of late. But I loved his performance in this film as the creator of the Oasis. So what happens is this competition is created by the creator, and the prize is an egg. And whoever gets to this egg first is granted sort of control over the Oasis, which to me sounds absolutely amazing. This film, it made me feel like a child again in the cinema, watching some of these big action science fiction movies for the first time. That's how it made me feel, and the whole idea of being able to control this magical sort of incredible world with all these characters that I've grown up knowing and loving. This film was like a nostalgic sugar rush. That's the only thing I can think of to sum this film up, is nostalgic sugar rush. But that, for me, was also a little bit of an issue, and it affected how I sort of really felt about the film by the end, even though I don't get me wrong, I really liked this film. For me, it was an issue that I had with the film. But first of all, let's go on to the action in this film. I absolutely loved the action in this movie. During the first act, you're sort of thrown into this sort of it's a chase. It's a race scene. That's what it is, and it was incredible. It was so much fun. The way that Steven Spielberg, shoots the action, the way the action sort of the way it flowed as you're going along with these cars doing it. Because I fancy in scenes like this, in race scenes, it can get very confusing, and sometimes you can get a bit lost, and it can sometimes throw you out depending on how a director shoots these scenes, especially when there's so much going on. Like, it's a very chaotic scene, and there was at points where I thought it could have really just become a bit of a mess. But the way Spielberg handles this race scene was incredible with the camera, and how the way it just flowed with the action. As a result, it became very immersive and exciting, and it didn't for once throw me out of the film. And you've got things like King Kong. King Kong just comes out of nowhere, and it brought a big cheesy grin to my face. You've got the classic T-Rex, the original T-Rex, Rexy, as well, which I was smiling throughout the entire race scene because of those moments. And what I want to say about the King Kong, the actual design of the King Kong within this movie, I really liked it. It looked scary. It looked like, it looked scary. And for a film that's over 2 hours long, I think it was like something like 2 hours, 20 minutes with credits, I think. It didn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like 2 hours, which is a good thing, really. I felt like the pacing was just right. Everything moved quite quickly, and it doesn't really sort of one of my issues was it didn't really set up the world enough. So you're introduced to the main character, but then you're sort of just thrown straight into it, and it sort of doesn't really stop. Like, you have got those sort of slower, quieter moments within the movie, but they didn't really affect the pacing as such, but it really sort of flowed quite nicely. But as a result, I felt like for me it sacrificed the sort of world building, you could say, and I wanted to know more about certain characters and the lead, and I think they sort of try to sort of skim past that and just sort of throw you in it instead. And so, even though I haven't really got a major problem with the pacing, because it worked for me, I would have liked just a little bit more of a setup during the beginning of during the first act of this movie. I really did feel like it just sort of threw you in there, whereas I wanted to know a bit more about the lead character. And my issue with nostalgia is you've got all this sort of Well, it's not an issue. Well, it is kind of an issue, but it's not. I loved seeing all these video game characters, all these film references from the 80s. I loved it. It was great. It brought a big smile to my face. I think I was smiling through the entire duration of this film. But for me, it sort of overshadowed the story and mainly the characters. And that for me became an issue because as a result of that, it sort of felt a little bit soulless and a little bit empty. I enjoyed the film, I loved it, it was a great and fun experience, but my overall feeling afterwards was it just felt a little bit empty, and I wanted more from the characters. I wanted to know more about the characters, and like going back to the sort of world building, I kind of wanted there to be more of a setup during that first act. I really do think that that nostalgia aspect of the film overshadowed the plot and the characters. And don't get me wrong, I loved all those Easter eggs in the film. I mean, they've got the Spartans from Halo in there. Like I said, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. All of that was great. But the film felt like it became more about nostalgia than the actual story it was telling, for example. That's how I felt. It felt like it had become more important. But they sort of, at the same time, it almost felt as if they knew you were going to love this film for the nostalgia and for all those, really geeky Easter eggs. And so, really, but I liked it. I did like the performances by Olivia Cooke and Ty Sheridan, that play the lead characters. I did really like their performances, and as a result of their performances, it actually helped sort of carry these characters through what I did feel was actually quite an empty movie. I do feel like as a result of their performances, it helped carry their characters through this story and make you care for these characters at least a little bit. I really liked what Ty Sheridan did with his performance. He plays an orphan, and so, but it sort of really doesn't touch too much on, like, you kind of know, it tells you what's happened in his life, but very briefly for me, and I wanted to know more. Like I said, going back to having there be a more of a setup. I wanted it to sort of just explore his character a bit more and explore his past a bit more for me to really care a little bit more, and then add to that emotion which certain moments needed, because there are scenes which require emotion, and I just felt like it lacked that emotional clout as a result of the lack of character building, character development. Music by Alan Silvestri. I absolutely adored the soundtrack. It was going to be composed by John Williams, but he had to do work on The Post, another Spielberg movie, so we had Alan Silvestri, and I love a lot of his previous works, with the likes of The Predator. I love his style of music, the music that he creates for films, and I loved what he did in this film. It was perfect, it was great. This was a really fun, exciting movie, full of geeky Easter eggs, and it was very creative and imaginative. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely want to read the book. As a result, I will be reading the book, so then I'll probably end up comparing it. This did what films should do, and that is, immerse you into this world that they are creating, and, just forget about the real world, that reality, and just sort of escape for 2 hours, and the film achieves that. And if a film does that, for me, that's a big plus already. And that's what the film does. And in a way, it also reminded me of when I was growing up and I used to sort of just lose myself in video games. I mean, I was a big gamer growing up and I loved playing video games, and it was a way of just escaping into these worlds. And that's what this film does. It does exactly that. It loses you into this world. It grabs you and drags you out of reality and just immerses you into this world, and you just get lost for 2 hours. And I did. I was glued to the screen. I was with these characters, even though they weren't quite as developed as I wanted them to be. And it was an enjoyable experience overall. It was a film that I did have issues with, as I pointed out, but it was an enjoyable movie and I had a lot of fun with it. So I will be giving Ready Player One a B. So yeah, they are my thoughts and opinions of Ready Player One, the film adaptation. What did you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Let me know below. What were your thoughts on this movie? Do you agree or disagree with anything I say? Let me know and let's get a discussion going. My next review will be for Love, Simon. So yeah, looking forward to bringing that review to you guys next. And again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And remember, if you like what you see and you share the same passions as me, then why not hit subscribe?